All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So we're here with a part 4 of how to get better at our scoring shots. And one of the variables that we're going to dive into today is how can we access different trajectories kind of with the same motion. So I think trajectory control is incredibly important, especially when it comes to accessing different flag sticks. So we've got different conditions we're always going to be playing in. We might be playing in a condition where it's fairly windy. We need to flight the ball down. We might have a front pin that we need to get the golf ball up pretty quick. And so I think having a way of practicing and knowing the variables that are going to give us the ability to change and control the trajectory is really, really important. So let's get into it. All right, so the first thing I think, this is what I was told back in the day, is how I was taught to manage my trajectory was just simply due in part to ball position. I think there's a lot more to it than that, okay? And so I'm not saying that if I put the ball position back in my stance, it's not going to give me the ability to hit it lower, because it definitely will. And not saying that putting the ball forward in the stance isn't going to give me the ability to hit it higher. But I think there's a lot more to it. And so one of the pieces that I think that we need to be cognizant of, and we need to actually know how to practice, we know how to work on, is how quickly does the golf club actually start to rise after impact. So this would be what we would call the ascent angle of the golf club. It's kind of a big word right there. So what we're going to go into is we're going to go into 3 different release patterns here that are going to give us the ability to change the trajectory of the shot, keeping relatively the same ball position and keeping relatively the same golf swing right here. We're going to change up how the release works and where we actually get the finish to. So most people, their traditional golf swing is going to have more of a release pattern that looks like this. So if we look at release patterns, the faster we move this lead wrist up, okay, the faster we move this lead wrist up, this would be radial deviation. And the quicker we move it into extension this way, the faster that golf club gets out of the ground. So if we looked at one of our release patterns here, we're going to reference a few different points. We're going to reference where we are, right arm parallel to the ground, and how much upward hinge we actually have right here, because this is where we're going to practice it, okay? So the most amount of upward hinge that I could have would probably give me the ability to produce the highest shot, assuming all else is equal, okay? So we could, in theory, we could say we've got 3 different releases. We've got high, medium, low, okay? So parallel to the floor would be low. Right here would be mid. And at 90 degrees, that would be high. So from in here, in essence, what I have the ability to do is I can keep the same ball position. I can keep the same setup. I can have the same amount of forwardness to my pelvis right here. And what we're going to actually practice changing is how much upward hinge we actually have. I think this is a great skill for all of us to be able to understand and also be able to practice right here, okay? So there's our three release patterns that we're going to go over. Let's dive into the first one. So the very first one we can go into, I think there's a piece right here that plagues a lot of amateurs, which we could call casting and early releasing. So I'd say most amateurs and most, let's say the poor golfer typically has more release, okay? So I think we need to start with the very first release pattern we want to learn how to do is how can we keep this arc as long as possible, and what are some ways that we can practice? Because once we have the tools to do that, then we can start going into the rate of upward hinge that we would create to start to change the actual ball flight right here. So here's one of the things that I like to use in regards to a drill for this. I'm going to set up a station right here. So the first station is what we're going to do is we're going to take an alignment stick and we're going to go out 1, 2, 3 steps in front of us, okay? So this is going to be relatively on my target line, okay? I hope you're enjoying today's video, and I wanted to take a quick second just to let you know one of my favorite things that I do outside of YouTube and in-person coaching is online coaching. So through the Skillest app, I think one of the greatest things that every player worldwide has access to is you can choose the coach that you would like to work with. This is by far been one of my favorite things, and I think it has helped me out, and it's helped a lot of players out from getting information that is tailored to helping you. So if you haven't tried online coaching, I'd love the opportunity to work with you. Follow me on Skillest, where I'm offering a free swing evaluation for anybody that wants to get started today. Now, the reason we want to put an alignment stick there, it gives me a goal and it gives me an expectation and it gives me a visual of how am I going to get that golf club there. Now, the next thing we're going to do is if I take, let's say I take a magnet right here and I place an antenna on the actual club head, okay? So what I want to do right in here is I'd want to say, okay, so in order for this club to be lower, in order for this club to launch lower underneath that red line that I have in front of me, how am I going to make this easier on myself? So I would say this, the head's always going to stay on center. So the more that I move pressure forward, the more I actually start to turn away. What you'll notice is there's a few factors here that move the grip handle forward, okay? The first one would be horizontal movements. The next one right here would actually start to be rotation, okay? So rotation starts to move the grip handle forward. So when I'm delivering the golf club down right here, you can see how low the actual loft is. And then my goal after this is going to be keeping the club head as close to the ground as possible, which is going to make me continue to move my body right here, okay? So I think the first thing is actually saying, well, what does this feel like to where I've gone forward with my pressure? It's not only am I going horizontally, but now if you watch the center of my pelvis, it's going to start to work inward, okay? As it's working inward, that also gives me the ability to side bend to where my right arm is more forward and more under. That's what's giving me the ability to keep, you can see how long I can keep this club head lower to the ground right here, okay? So we need to add a skill like this, and I think setting a goal, setting an expectation, creating a feel to do this is really important. Now, here's the next thing that we're going to add to this shot. We're going to take a glove, and what we're going to do is we're going to place this underneath our left arm, and this arm right here is going to stay pinned to our chest so that our first move is not throw and pull behind us to where if we shorten the radius too quickly, we're only left with scooping right here, okay? So how we're going to start this off right here is I'm going to place this underneath my left arm. Again, my left arm is going to feel like it is on top of my chest, and I'm going to feel like this really stays here forever. So the only thing that's happening now is I have forward movement, rotation that's moving the grip forward, and I'm stopping the golf club. A really good visual reference for you is when you're looking down the target line, see that that club head from your point of reference is still lower than the red line. So if we demonstrate this right in here, so it'd be normal setup, normal ball position, handles forward, I'm going to go impact feel through it, club head down with the head still on center. Then we'll hit one like this. So we can see how low right there that golf ball came out. And you can also see how far forward I actually got my low point, okay? So that would be one of the very first places here that I would actually start is right in here. Feel impact, club head's low, my left arm stays with the chest so that I can use more of my turn right here to get the golf club through. Let's do that one again. That was even better right there. So you can see how low that club head stayed. I can feel how this side bend piece is in, and I had the ability to stabilize that. So I feel a lot more turn right there, helping me square the club up with the arm staying behind me to help bring the flight of that golf ball down quite a bit. I would tell you this, I probably wouldn't move on to any other release pattern until this here becomes almost second nature. Make this the number one priority, because I think being able to access a lower flight and having more of what we would call a long arc release with rotation, we can start to use that to turn this into other shots right here. So same thing, I'm going to try and keep this one even lower. We're going to see if I can keep it almost at the white point of that red stick, so halfway up. So I'm going to feel more turn, keeping the ascent of the golf club lower, and I'll let it go. And that was even lower right there. That was absolutely phenomenal. So the pieces, again, that are helping me to move the low point forward, keep the ascent angle of the club down, is my forward movement, and then my inward rotation. And again, the side bend is what's helping me to keep the head on center. You can see if I take the side bend out, where that would move me to, which I think creates a lot of stand-up. Again, the gloves reference is to keep the left arm with the chest as we're turning through the shot. I think this is a great way to start to learn how to manage the flight. Let's go into the next one. So when we go into release pattern number 2, so what we've just worked on is straight, club head stays low to the ground. We've got our horizontal and our rotation in to help us really bring the flight down, really compress that golf ball. Now what we're going to start to do next is what we're going to feel here. We're going to feel a slightly faster rehinge. So again, I think what makes this easier for players right here is map out the details to the finish of where you want to get it to versus just thinking about it. This is where I see so many golfers struggle, is they try and think their whole way through it versus feel your way through it. So if I did the same thing, so if I went impact, rotation, there's my low release, I'm going to start to add that element into it. Now I'm going to start to make some practice swings where I can see that this release pattern's more at, again, 0, 45, this would be 90, that'll be our next one, and saying, okay, what happens when I keep this more to 45? Now my expectation with this alignment stick right here is my goal with the first shot, the low shot, was to try and keep it down here where the halfway point of the stick was. My next goal is going to be to keep it kind of in between the upper part of this alignment stick. So I'm using that as my visual relationship to match that to what my release is going to feel like. So now, if we let this go right here, my last look is going to be the window and the height that I want to see this golf ball launch at. And my commitment is to be at this 45 versus 0 from a release pattern standpoint. And we'll let it go. So that was significantly higher. Crazy well struck shot right there. And I like this because I don't have to think about all this other, I can't say that it's nonsense, but I think if I can focus more on where I'm trying to get to the finish, a lot of times this stuff starts to take care of itself in the backswing right there. Okay, so there's how I would map out the 45 degree. Now let's get into the last one. Okay, so for our final release right here, this is going to be the one, again, I would only recommend doing this if we have the ability to produce release 1 and release 2 firstly, okay? So the 0 and the 45 before we get into the 90 right there, okay? And again, this is a checkpoint. Let me just remind you, this is a checkpoint that you can see on video is at right arm parallel. How much release do I have here? So I'm going to keep all the same pieces in place right here, but what I'm going to feel faster right here, and you'll see how I'm going to rehearse this, is I'm going to be feeling a lot more hand speed down here, and you can see how much I've worked that into a rehinge. And what that's going to do is that's going to help me to raise the ascent of the golf club quicker. The key right here for you, you can still have weight that's moved forward, but the head has to stay on center. What you'll notice here is if my head continues to rotate forward, there's nothing to get the club out of the ground except for me pulling up with my shoulders, bending my arms, etc. So we need to make sure that the head has the ability right here to stay centered. So I'm going to go in here, one more rehearsal. So this one, I'm going to try and get it to launch above this alignment stick that's about 3 steps in front of me. So now I'm going to be changing my visual window right here. I'm going to be looking above it, okay? Still got a little bit of weight for it. I might be adding just a hair of tilt. And I'm going to feel more hand speed faster down here at the bottom, okay? And then we'll let it go. So we're going to get this into release 3 where we get into a 90 degree angle as quickly as possible. So now you can see that golf ball went significantly higher, and you'll see the rate of speed when we slow this down from face on. You're going to see how quickly I basically put a brake on the handle to accelerate the club head to get into more of this 90 degree release right there. So that would be a shot right there that I would use sometimes if I'm downwind. I use it when I'm trying to go after front pins that I might have to get it over a bunker, etc. Things like that, where the ball can come in, land softer, steeper landing angle, not as much rollout. But again, I would take these in order. Practice release 1 first, move to release 2 next, the mid-range release, because that's probably where most of our stock shots are going to be played from, before we move into this last skill, which is adding a lot more hand speed, a lot more decelerating of the grip to accelerate the club head to get that to move up more. So I hope this video helps. I hope you're getting some great pieces of information here out of this video series. If you need anything from me or you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.